Hey, thanks, Gregor. Good morning, Paul. Andrew Kopp was saying how you guys felt counted out as a team by a lot of people, and maybe there was a bit of a chip on the shoulder. Dylan DeMello joked about ruining some hockey pools. How does the feeling of being here compare to the last time you guys were here in 2018 when you entered as the number 2 team in the league?
It's a different group. I mean, the environment of everything has changed, and so it doesn't compare. Nothing feels the same. I mean, and nothing is the same, right? Um, I can tell you that it's also different because it's an older group, right? There's so much more experience, and I think as your team gets older, it just starts to appreciate the moments more. Um, and that would be it. It also hasn't been long enough, right? It's been 4 games in 6 days, so you're kind of through the first round, and it's like we did it in half the time. So you don't have that time to let it build in, and I mean everything's happened so quickly. Such an unusual time. Nothing's the same. All I would say is that there seems to be a really good vibe in the room, and it is different. I just don't know that I can describe it better to you than that. It's not just the hockey, and it's not just the men. The environment has shaped this group as well.
We'll go next to Sarah Lusky from TSN. Go ahead, Sarah.
Hi, Paul, how do you plan to approach these next few days as you wait to find out when your next series will start?
Yeah, so it was 2 days yesterday. I mean, I don't know what time you guys got home, but I mean, I finished the media, I think at 2:05 in the morning. So yesterday was a bit of a write-off, and we would do it's just medical. We have to come in and test every day, and it has to be done before noon. So it was a short turnaround. They went home, they came back, they tested. We did a 1-through on the medical. Today, we will spend more time off ice. So nobody skated, but everybody's kind of in the gym, and they've all got their own maintenance programs. And we do a real in-depth look at where we are medically. I think we're in pretty good shape, but I think we had 47 shot blocks in game 4, which means there's lots of ice bags going around. Tomorrow we'll get back on the ice. Our program in terms of how we want to play isn't going to change. Isn't dependent on the opponent. So we'll start there tomorrow back on the ice. A lot of that will be just getting back into the rhythm of it. And then away from the players, we're just kind of running whatever program we run to pre-scout a team. We're just doing it twice, right? So we're looking at both teams very closely. And then as soon as it's decided, we'll work back from the day of game 1, we'll work back in terms of video and what we do on the ice.
We'll go next to Ken Weaver from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Weaver.
Thanks, Gregor. Afternoon, Paul. You touched on Josh Morrissey after the last game. As someone who puts so much on his own shoulders, what's the tangible benefit of a series like that as you move forward in this playoff?
So you don't have to go and convince Josh that he played well, right? He's a veteran guy now that understands what he and Dylan were able to do. And just even some of the statistics of the series, I think he had 7 shot blocks in the last game and produced offense as well. So in the past playoff rounds, he and Jake Trouba were kind of tasked with the other team's number 1 line, and that was almost all we could hope for from him, and he delivered it. And then in this round, he did both. He and Dylan did just a marvelous job on the 2 elite scorers in the world, and also put some numbers up. So we think he has a strong understanding, kind of the evolution of his game, where now he's able to do both.
We'll go next to Joey Slattery from CTV Winnipeg. Go ahead, Joey.
Thanks, Gregor. Hi, Paul. Just wondering, we talked a lot about the doubt coming into this series, and a lot of people having the Oilers over the Jets. Obviously, the belief was there, but what does it mean when your team overcomes that kind of doubt in the way you did, sweeping it, especially when you consider each game was really close, like much closer than a sweep would normally be?
Yeah, you understand why the Oilers were favored. I mean, when you finish ahead of us in the standings and you've got 2 players that are, it's so unusual and so dynamic, it's an understandable prediction. But we felt going into that series that the games were a lot closer. We lost a bunch of 1-goal games in there. If you take the goalie, the empty net goals out, there's a whole. So what we needed to do wasn't to dominate the series. We needed to change it by a goal. right? Give up one, get one more, and that's all you need to do over a 7-game series. And that's kind of how that whole thing played out. It's not a 4-game sweep. We ended up playing probably closer to 5, but we were 1 goal better in the games that we needed to be. And so you get to kind of carry that with you. We're not coming to the rink thinking we just dominated the Edmonton Oilers. We just came in and scratched and clawed to be 1 goal better in each game and found a way to do it. But you get to carry that with you.
We'll go next to Kelly Moore from 680 CGOB. Go ahead, Kelly.
Thank you, Gregor. Good afternoon and congratulations, Paul. I'm just wondering, in your long and storied history, if you have ever been in a circumstance where you had to play a player more than 60 minutes, and how were you shaking your head when you found out Darnell Nurse got back to Edmonton and had a baby later that morning as well?
Well, so he would be the guy maybe in the series that we talked about a fair amount, but maybe he doesn't get the recognition that he deserves. I think the biggest one, I think we got into a double overtime game against Boston, and Ray Bourque had played 42 minutes in that game, and I couldn't believe it. So when we get off the bench in between periods, and I think he's already at 45, I'm thinking how much, I think he had about a 4.5-minute shift in the game. And you're almost punch drunk on the bench, and you're thinking, did I miss him coming off the ice? Because he's still out there. And I'm looking anyway. He's a special athlete, like to be able to continue. And he was still bringing the puck, and he was still going back and touching it first. He had just an incredibly impressive series. The development of that guy, kind of under the radar into you. If you're playing that many minutes, I mean, you're now in the Norris Trophy conversation for sure, in my mind, with the numbers that he put up this year. He's a brilliant player. I guess the truth of it is, I always thought that he's going to wear down at some point, and I never actually saw that. Right. And congratulations to the Nurse family on the addition. Outstanding.
We'll go next to Murat Atesh from The Athletic. Go ahead, Murat.
Thanks, Gregor. Hi, Paul. My questions to all the guys today have been about sleep. I'm wondering how you coach it. Is there a get 7 to 9 hours? Is there wake up when you normally do? What the science might say, and how you approach it yourself after a game that late to get the mental stuff going back to 100%.
Well, you know what we do, like in the coaches room, we come in the morning, the first thing we talk about is how everybody slept. And then you actually get to a point where you're relieved if somebody else didn't sleep any good, because you might, you know what I mean? Man, like we waking up at 3 all the time, right? So, okay, we're all messed up, but we're all messed up the same way. So it has something to do with our travel. That's we don't fly back from the West Coast anymore because we don't like getting in after 3 o'clock. And you're saying, that's great. We just came home from a home game after 3 o'clock, right? How many days does that usually take before you can get back to being right? It's usually about 3. So a little bit of break in this series. Hopefully we'll be able to get past that. In terms of, we talked right after game 3 about, right in the room after the game about the prep for the next game starts now. Like, we can enjoy it for about an hour, and then everybody calm down, get the food in you, drink as much water as you can, get home. Even if you're laying in bed, get down as fast as you can. And then, so we haven't had an off day, even on days we've been tired off the road. We've never not been able to not bring them to the rink, which in some ways may be a good thing. Now it's 5 straight months of coming to the rink to get tested, but it gets them out of bed at a regular time. So we are on top of that as much as we can be. I think, maybe in a little bit of sleep debt right now. I don't know if you get used to the fact that we didn't have a road game in our time zone, but we're certainly used to the feeling of sleep debt, I guess. We talk about it a fair amount. I don't know that we have all the answers for it. We've tried to educate ourselves, reach out. What we're finding is we're better off getting to bed as fast as we can than not. So I'm not sure if that's particularly scientific.
I'll go back to Murat for a follow-up. Go ahead, Murat.
Yeah, just following up on the idea that you guys really do try to educate yourselves. Where do you reach out to for sleep science?
Oh, there's lots of people, right? There's lots of doctors even in the area, our own medical staff, and I think you're better off having a doctor do the research than you are doing it yourself. They understand that stuff. So our medical group here would have strong opinions on how a lot of this should run.
We'll go next to Jeff Hamilton from the Free Press. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thanks, Gregor. I'll start off by giving Darnell Nurse's fiancée Michaela credit. She had the baby and probably went through a lot more that morning than anyone did the previous night. But
aren't you a sweetheart now?
forward,
You're going to be getting lots of nice
just
tweets.
saying.
Jeff,
There we
such
go.
a nice
Hey,
man.
just jumping on something when I can. I forget my question. No, I don't. When you look at Darnell Nurse's time, 62 minutes, and you look at Trevor Lewis's, and you look at Nate Thompson's, and you look at Matthew Perot's at 7, 7, and 10. I'm just kind of curious the philosophy that goes into overtime, and why not use guys that, you've leaned on essentially throughout the season overtime.
And this is a really, really unusual set of circumstances, and it has to do with McDavid and Draisaitl. So the idea is not play a triple overtime game and shut your fourth line down. I wouldn't do that in a regular season game when there were 60, and I talked about how important it was that those guys played. The problem was, you either want Scheifele or you want Lowry out against them, certainly in a road game. And then they got locked into a rotation of 3 lines. So they shut their fourth line right down. So your options then are to pull. You can't really pull Lowry and you can't really pull Scheifele out of that rotation, because if you go to 4 and you're in 3, then you're going to get those guys loose against the line you don't want. And those guys are playing those minutes too. So I know that I got Scheifele at a big number, but he's 9 minutes less than those other guys. So we're hoping for the advantage will eventually come through with those guys. But that very likely won't happen again. Like I'll leave Thompson, I'll leave that line on the ice in the next round. And it's not being disrespectful to the first lines. It's those two guys are freaks of nature. Like their skill set is so unusual that once and you never like the guy on the road, because sometimes on the road you can feel like you can run the home team's bench. Once you know what they're doing, you can kind of decide who they put on the ice. He got into that 3-line rotation very early. He pulled 2 of our defensemen in the 3rd period, right? Like those guys didn't see the ice again. It was unusual and it was extreme. And Thompson was up on the shift. I was going to start. So I'd start to work Perot in on the Dubois line. And I had Thompson up after the power play. He was going out and he didn't think he was going to get a chance, and Kyle scored. So it worked out okay. But that wasn't really, that was Jeff, a result of a really unusual set of circumstances that I don't think we'll see again.
We'll go next to Paul Stravevsky from NHL.com. Go ahead, Paul.
Thanks, Gregor. Hi, Paul. Congratulations. Looking around the league, we're seeing captains really stepping up their games, from Mark Stone to Patrice Bergeron to Jordan Staal scoring, in overtime last night, to Blake Wheeler. I wonder, how important do you think is captain's role during the playoffs, and how much of a factor has Blake's play specifically and his demeanor been, in Jets' success so far?
Yeah, so I'll go back to kind of an earlier statement there. Like you're talking about all really veteran guys, and I've found with those guys, as they get older, they just flourish in playoff hockey, because they appreciate, first of all, how hard it is to get to the playoffs. They have a better perspective on the meaningfulness of playoff hockey, and that drives their emotions, right? They get wired for playoff hockey. It's the best time of year, and they appreciate that better than a 23-year-old is. Like, this is it, right? And they kind of maybe have a look going, I don't have 10 more playoff seasons in me. This is it. And I think we see it in Blake, and it's not just in the games. It's how he moves around the room. He's in a great mood. He's excited. This is fun. So I think that those guys most definitely have a major impact on the culture of your room during the year. And Blake's a driver, right? He's a grinder and he's a driver and he's a wired guy. So when he brings more than that, like in its terms, like having fun around it, it kind of lightens the room a little bit. This guy's all excited to play, and it's the perspective of it. I think, because when I say that he's all excited to play, if I'm a fan sitting at home going, you mean you got guys on your team that aren't excited to play? And that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, after a certain number of years in the league, you can come to playoff hockey with a completely different appreciation of it. And we see that from him.
And final question to Kelly Moore from 680 CGOB. Go ahead, Kelly.
Hey, Paul, just to follow up on the fourth line question, most of us would be sulking under those circumstances. Nate and Trevor are such pros. How were those guys contributing, even though it wasn't actively on the ice? And when you said you were going to throw Nate out there, how tough would that be after, sitting on the bench? And
it would be real tough, but
Yeah.
I think where I was with that was, they had kind of, I thought the referees managed the game well, right? They got 3 power plays, or we got 3, they got 4, and then it was kind of, all right, the game's under control. Nobody's taking cheap shots out there, so there's not a call. They fire one in the stands, and now I'm thinking, what happens? I mean, these 2 guys are critical killers for us. That power play unit they got's the best in the world. What happens if we get one and I got these guys sitting on the bench now for an hour and a half, and I'm going to fire them out there against that? So that was me going, all right, you got through the first one and maybe the second one. I didn't like where I was in the rotation, but I felt you're kind of locked into it. Those guys never stopped talking the entire night. Said something to them between, second and third overtime in between periods about, I know it's a challenge, but you guys got to stay ready, because if you're going on the ice, you're going on the ice is a really critical piece. And they got it. Like, they understand there's the advantage of having 2 really, really veteran guys, right? They didn't check out after they missed their third shift. They knew what was going on. They can see it, and they're all in. And when we're coming off the ice, they're as excited as anybody, right? They're right in on the win.